Hi, it's Andy. And I remember when I heard my very first podcast that inspired me to do this show, it felt like I was in on a secret and I had this whole new edge to my leadership. That's what I want for you. I want you to feel like, hey, I can listen to Andy on my drive into work and feel like I learned something new and I can apply it to work today. Most of all, I want you to finish this episode feeling better about yourself, your life, and how you're moving forward. That's my greatest desire for you. You deserve to feel amazing about the life you're living. And if you're stuck, I hope this helps get you going in the right direction. I really believe today's episode is special because it's going to give you some concepts at how to look at things, how to think through things, the process that will help make it easier. And hopefully you haven't heard these before, but I know it will be extremely helpful. All right. With that said, let's dive in. Welcome to the Leading Life Podcast, the place where leadership meets real life. Here is where we talk about leading with intention, living with clarity, and getting better results for the people we serve every single day. If you're ready to grow, you're in the right place. Right now on today's episode, Top 10 Thinking Frameworks from Modern Minds. Yes, welcome to the Leading Life Podcast, where we talk about what it takes to grow, lead, and live with purpose. No fluff, no empty motivation, just practical tools that you can use in your next decision, your next conversation, and your next move in life. Today's episode is going to hit different because we're not talking about habits. We're talking about how you think. And here's the truth. Your results in life are not driven by effort alone. They're driven by the frameworks you use to interpret the world. So today I'm giving you 10 powerful thinking frameworks from some of the most impactful modern minds. And most importantly, a guide how to actually use them. So what is a thinking framework to begin with? Well, it's a mental model. It's a way to process problems, decisions, and challenges that we face. So instead of reacting emotionally, we will respond with structure. And the best leaders don't just work harder, they think better. Let's dive in right away. Number one, first principles thinking. This is the first framework I want you to think about. This breaks things down to the truth. So instead of asking, how is this usually done? You ask, what is actually true here? Strip everything down to fundamentals, then rebuild. Use it when you feel stuck or you're boxed in. Here's a great example. Rockets, right? Rockets that go to space. They're expensive because they cost hundreds of millions of dollars. That's what we think. That's conventional thinking. But first principle thinking would be, what is a rocket actually made of? Aluminum, titanium, fuel, and electronics. What do those materials cost raw, right? What's the raw price of those materials? Elon Musk realized that the materials were only a small fraction of the final price. So instead of buying rockets, he built them from scratch and built SpaceX. That's first principles thinking. Instead of saying, how is it usually done? You think, what is actually true here? Number two, inversion thinking. Start with what you want to avoid. So instead of asking, how do I succeed? Maybe ask the opposite question, how do I fail? Then avoid those behaviors. Especially this is effective when you're unsure what the right move is. So let's talk about Charlie Munger. He was Warren Buffett's partner and he was famous for this. So instead of asking, how do I live a great life? Charlie asked, what would guarantee a miserable life? And his answers were being unreliable, staying resentful, avoid learning, and surrounding yourself with toxic people. What did he do? The total opposite. And he became incredibly successful. The third framework is called second order thinking. So that's thinking beyond the first outcome. So what happens is what people usually think is what happens next. Great thinkers instead ask what then happens after that. This is really helpful when you're making big decisions. So let's say you're avoiding a tough conversation with a team member, right? Your first order is we'll just keep things running smooth. But the second issue is, what happens if I do that? I keep avoiding the conversation. Well, issues start to grow. Standards would drop. Other people notice. Your culture starts to weaken. You start to lose credibility as a leader. The short-term comfort leads to long-term chaos. So second order thinking is just thinking beyond the first outcome. Number 4, the map is not the territory. So what that's saying is basically your perception isn't reality. What you see is filtered by your past, your beliefs, and most of all, your emotions. So use this when you feel triggered or certain you're absolutely right about something. So you're talking to your spouse, and he or she gives you a short answer, and their tone feels off. It's not warm like usual. So your map may think, oh man, he's like really annoyed with me, or she's mad at me, or start thinking, what did I do wrong? Or why are they being so distant? You feel in your chest slight tension, maybe a defensiveness creeping in. Here's the territory though. Maybe your partner's tired. Maybe she's not feeling well. Maybe she's under the weather. Maybe he's distracted. Maybe they've got something completely unrelated going on in their head, but you don't know that. So you react to the map. Your tone tightens, you give a defensive reaction, or they start feeling you shifting. Now they're reacting to your energy. Boom. A small moment went to this whole huge unnecessary disconnect. That is, your map is not the territory. So think through things a little bit more and realize there may be much more going on than what your immediate reaction is. All right, number 5, growth mindset. Yeah, gosh, everybody talks about that. That's a huge thing that's been around a long time, developed by Carol Dweck, but skills are built, they're not fixed. So instead of saying, I'm not good at this, shift to, I'm not good at this yet. Use it when you feel limited or discouraged. A great example of this was years and years ago, my optical shop got big display cases for Cartier. We were going to carry Cartier eyewear, right? Top of the line, very expensive. And when you got those glasses, you also had to be a certified, repair center for Cartier as well. Like if their frame was broken, you have to ship it out for them. My assistant manager's like, you know what? This is just too much. It's a pain. And I wish we could just get rid of them. And I'm not even going to try to sell them anymore. And I was like, whoa, like that is such a fixed mindset. So I thought about it for a little bit and I came to her the next day and I said, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to retrain the whole staff on how to handle Cartier glasses, how to handle the warranty, and we're going to get so good at it that we're going to start selling several a day and stop letting it be a hindrance, but use it so we can grow our business. And that's exactly what happened. That would be growth mindset, an example. So skills are built, they're not fixed. So instead of saying, hey, I'm not doing this right, you can say, I'm going to do this to get better at it. All right, let's talk about number 6, circle of control. Focus only on what you can influence. Yeah, I mean, it's simple, right? Divide your world into what you control, what you influence, and what you can't control. And you use this when you feel overwhelmed or frustrated. So a great example is, let's say 2 men live off the Florida coast and a hurricane is coming, right? The first guy, he's spending all his time watching the news and, arguing with his friends about the forecast and the storm's path and complaining about the government's response. And he says, man, this shouldn't be happening. We need to handle this better. This is panic. But he never boards up his windows, buys supplies, or makes a plan. So when the storm hits, he's overwhelmed. He's unprepared and he's panicking. The second person, instead, focused on his circle of control. Same storm, same situation, but he asks, what can I control right now? He boards up his windows. He stocks up on water and food. He checks on his neighbors. He creates a plan for his family. He still knows the storm is coming, but he's not consumed by it. And the result is when the storm hits, he's steady, prepared, and grounded. So both people had the same storm, the same uncertainty. The difference, one focused on what he couldn't control while the other focused on what he can control. Focus on what you can control, what you can influence, and what you can't control. All right. Number 7, Occam's razor. This is simple. It's just the simplest answer is often correct. And we overcomplicate everything in society. Sometimes the answer is the obvious one. So use this when you begin to overthink things. So let's say you have a situation at work and one of your employees makes a mistake. Overthinking would be like, God, they don't really care about what we're doing. They're not taking this seriously. Or, oh, they're starting to disengage, or they're just not committed. But Occam's razor says, maybe they didn't fully understand the task. Maybe the instructions weren't clear. Maybe they need guidance. Maybe I need to help them with more training. The result is you coach instead of judging. Number 8, confirmation bias awareness. You look for what you already know and believe. Your brain starts to filter for agreement. So use this when you're strongly convinced about something. So let's talk about a store manager, Mike, and he gets a new team member. And one day, someone casually says, this new guy that you hired, he's kind of lazy. And that's all it takes. The bias begins. Now Mike has a belief that the new guy he hired is lazy. And without realizing it, his brain starts filtering reality to confirm that belief. So Mike starts noticing like the guy's checking his phone, or he takes a full lunch break while we're busy, so there's no urgency, or he asks a question instead of trying to learn things on his own. But what Mike may not have noticed was the guy stayed late one night. He helped a coworker without being asked, and he's actually trying to learn the job correctly. Those moments get ignored or minimized. Mike starts treating him like he's lazy. He's less patient. He's using less coaching. He's giving him less opportunity, and the employee feels it. So the employee starts to pull back, disengage, and stop going that extra mile that he was before, all because of confirmation bias. So remember, you look for what you already believe. So dig deeper. Number 9, the 80-20 principle, or we call it the Pareto principle. That is just focusing on what actually moves the needle. So 20% of your actions create 80% of your results. You can use this when you're busy, but you're not always progressing. So let's think of it this way. Reality at work. 20% of your team often drives 80% of the results. 20% of your problems cause 80% of the headaches. Great leaders figure out, well, wait a minute. Who are my most impactful players and what are the real issues? That way you focus energy where it actually moves the needle. So Pareto principle, 20% of the actions of your actions create 80% of the results. And lastly, number 10, identity-based thinking. So this is basically acting in alignment with who you believe you are. You don't rise to goals, you fall to identity. So use this when you're trying to change a behavior. The best example of this, I think I told it in another episode, was about neuroscientist Emily McDonald. I love this story because she was addicted to nicotine and she was vaping all the time, and she knew she needed to stop. It wasn't good for her health. And she felt like she lost control with it, right? She was addicted. So she thought of herself who she wanted to become, right? She wanted to be this influencer, this neuroscientist that gave out great tips and help people learn how to manage their lives better. She wanted to be a professional speaker, so on, so on. So she said, if I'm my best self, does that person vape? And are they addicted to nicotine? And the answer was no. I think that's all it takes is, are you acting in alignment with who you believe you are, right? I want to build muscle in the gym. I want to get thin. Eating a bag of potato chips at night is not in alignment with who I believe I am. All right, so let's talk about how to take action. Here's where most people stop. They hear the frameworks, they nod, but nothing really changes. So let's fix that. I want you to pick one framework, not 10, not 2, just one. Ask, where am I stuck right now and which framework would help me today? And here they are again. First principles thinking, inversion thinking, second order thinking, the map is not the territory, Occam's razor, confirmation bias awareness, the Pareto principle, 80-20, circle of control, growth mindset, and reality-based thinking. I want you to apply it immediately. Don't wait, because action will create understanding. So if you used first principles, break a problem down today. If you use circle of control, write out what's actually yours to own. If you're using 80-20, identify your highest impact actions. Next, I want you to ask better questions. Frameworks are powered by questions. What's actually true here? What am I missing? And then what happens next? And then after that, next. And then I want you to practice daily. Thinking is a skill, and like any skill, it improves with repetition. Again, we talk about it all the time. A journal, a notebook is the best thing you can do. Just put down your thoughts. I don't care if it's mixed in with shopping lists or to-do lists or whatever you got in there. Just write down your thoughts every day, and it will help you go in the right direction, I promise. And then lastly, I want you to build your own system. Over time, you'll start stacking these frameworks, and eventually you don't react anymore. You just analyze, choose, and act with intention. Here is your leadership edge for the episode. The difference between average leaders and elite leaders, it's not effort. It's really not. It's how they think under pressure. When everyone else reacts, elite leaders pause. They apply a framework. They make better decisions. That's your edge. And let me leave you with a couple reflection questions. Number 1, where in my life am I reacting instead of thinking through things? Number 2, which framework would immediately improve my decisions? And then lastly, what problem have I been overcomplicating? If you change how you think, you change how you lead, you change how you live. These frameworks will give you that clarity, and clarity gives you confidence. And confidence, you're unstoppable after that. All right, so that is my episode. If this gave you practical leadership insight, share it with someone building a team or growing their influence. And if it made a positive impact for you, I would appreciate a rating and review on whatever platform you hear me on, and hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up next on the Leading Life podcast, where we don't just talk about leadership, but we actually live it. I'm Andy Zook. Remember, I want you to lead with purpose, live with intention, and keep becoming who you were meant to be. And most importantly, go out and be the hero in somebody's story today. Trust me, they need you. All right, here's to better thinking. Have an amazing week. I'll talk to you on the next episode. Take care. Bye.